Gus.
Hi. Sorry,
Nice to meet you.
I had trouble finding the entrance.
No, you're,
Thanks for coming.
you're on time.
Hello, how are you?
We're all early.
These are good.
So welcome, Gus.
You're 11th grader, is that right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a junior.
Welcome.
Sabine,
Nameplates are pretty cool.
You can take it with you when you go.
Sabine, you were here last year.
I was, yeah.
Okay, I couldn't recognize your face.
Yes.
All right, I think we're good to go. You ready, Patrick? Okay. Okay, welcome, board members and administration and students. And anyone in the community watching. This is an open up Board of Ed meeting, August 23rd, 2021. And hop right into the agenda, which I shall pull up here. I will pass the meeting over to Dr. McCursey to just go through some announcements, some dates, and you can go right into the COVID-19 update. I don't know if these dates were anything we wanted to specifically share, but those are good reminders. First 2 weeks, packed.
Yes, very busy. Can you hear me? I have to figure out the mics. All good? Okay. And I'll take my mask off for speaking just to make it more audible. So you want to go right into the superintendent reports?
Sure, if you want to, I just see 1B here, just as reminding people of dates. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think there, just to be clear, September 1's coming to us wonderfully fast. The board just did a walkthrough of all facilities, both Hillside and Farragut, and saw that we're almost ready. And the facilities team, the building and grounds team has been working almost 24/7 to have the facilities ready. And it's not just deep cleaning, as you've witnessed, but it's also some important remodeling within, and then the Hillside cafetorium is well on its way. And that's obviously a external project, but it's going to be a big, big win for the village and the district. And I'm lucky enough in my career to have been around some significant additions to school districts, so I speak with some informed opinion that this really, congratulations to you all for where it is and for what these facilities are looking like at this point with school opening. So then there is a run of some very important days off for both religious purposes and Labor Day. And then, modified fall sports begins. That's always a very important opportunity for a range of our students. And then a peer leadership fall senior retreat. So those are the dates in the record here.
Great, thank you. Great, well, we'll go right into 2A, which is an update on COVID-19.
Sure. What I've done, and both the board president and vice president agreed that it would be a good chance, probably for most meetings, at least for a good while, if not the whole year, to be providing an update to the board on where we are with COVID-19. We've had quite regular communications going out. We've been using a framework of what we know now, but what we have to figure out. Where we are, just to cut to the chase, is as of this evening, we have, starting at, 12 midnight, a new governor coming in, and there's some anticipation that we may be seeing some significant announcements over the next several days. We're not sure, but this morning's, every Monday at 8:30, superintendents across Westchester County gather by Zoom with George Latimer and the Department of Health. I was with our leadership team, so not part of that, but my good contacts told me that basically it was a session saying everybody's anticipating something. And as I shared broadly on Friday, given that the Connecticut governor and the New Jersey governor are mandating masks, mandating vaccinations with the test option for employees. This is employees, because you can't mandate for students, but mandating for employees. There's some sense that New York will follow, but that's a bit of an open debate as to whether that'll happen. Either way, you should know from all the updates that we are strongly recommending vaccination, encouraging all to do that. We are also about to sign on with a Westchester County paid-for coordinated testing program, and that's optional. But that, if indeed the governor does not make a decision, we are strongly encouraging the vaccination, but then have that test option built in. So we kind of will parallel that. And I know the Quad Village district's all exactly where we are. We are also, as you know, I've said this a while ago, mandating masks. And that's gonna be true for anybody in the building, around students or not. And then when away from students, if you're in a place where people in an office and that's only you and someone else, the mask may come off. And we'll obviously build in mask breaks such as Hastings has done in the past. I've received very few questions from any families about this. The staff is strongly supportive and encouraging, both through their organized bodies and then independently, of the importance of this. And we have some individuals not vaccinated, and as we know, vaccination or not, it's a layering strategy at this point. And so the other part of that layering strategy besides masks is ventilation and cleanliness, and you all should feel very, very good here as a board if you want to have more updates on that. But I'm coming from a location where families and parents were very concerned about issues of ventilation and building cleanliness. So as I talked to Joe and his team, I heard all the answers that I had been asked over the last 18 months by parents in other communities. So I think you can be quite assured, but I know Joe would be very willing with Maureen to come in. Please excuse all the first names, but be willing to come in and speak to you about that critical layering issue. One thing we will be doing, and it went out today, is we are surveying all of our employees as to their vaccination status. We're encouraging them to respond. We cannot require it, but we think we'll get a very good response, and we've asked for that response date by Thursday. Rightly so, a number of families have asked for that information. I've been given out last year, so it's natural that we update that. We think it's a very high percentage, but I didn't want to put numbers out that then were wrong. That's kind of like the worst thing you can do amongst many things, but it is particularly bad. So we should have that information, if not in this Friday's update, shortly thereafter. The other thing we're going to do, which has been an update for the board certainly, and the community may have read it, is we're not going to do the daily, I can't even say the word, but the daily, thank you, there's some words that just I can't get out. But there's very strong support for us not to do it. It was the right thing last year, but not this year, and even our medical advisors have encouraged us not to take that step. And even if you look at the New York Department of Education, they're saying it's really not necessary. We are, though, considering what we might call an honor system. And we're running that by the leadership team, we're running it by the bargaining units, but it would be integral to all families, all staff, and it would be before school starts, so we're running out a bit of time, but we're getting the legal review for it right now, but it would be basically say at the beginning of the year, commit as students, commit as adults to a set of healthy behaviors. And that part of that would be each morning you're doing your own health check at home, and we list the variables, the factors you keep you home, such as temperature, things like that, not feeling well. And at this point, we'd ask people to sign it, but it's an honor system. And it's simply saying, by signing this, you're committing to a conversation. And so far the leadership teams liked it a lot. The signature part might be an issue for some employees, so we'll figure that out. But I think that just the idea of an honor system, a reminder, we're looking at that, but we'll update you. The only other thing I would add, which is and what we're going to resolve, is visitors. And we're kind of waiting to see what our guidance is in the Quad Village, because as I've learned, we really need to be coordinating with them. I think the feeling right now is that we would actually like to minimize the number of visitors in the building, because we're all in. We want to stay all in. And we're quite confident with the level of vaccination rates, the layering, the commitment to masks. Again, I've not felt or heard debates on masks, but we know what's going on across the nation in terms of debates about vaccinations. If someone isn't vaccinated, that's their choice. I respect that, understand it, but then the other layerings matter. And we're seeing elsewhere in the country, as schools have reopened, a very large number of students having to go in quarantine. And we think causally, not correlation, but that's tied to issues of masks, issues of vaccinations. But it is, we want to minimize any point of exposure in the school. I think everyone in Hastings wants to be all in. We want to keep us all in. We want to minimize quarantine. So literally today in this room, the leadership team, unanimously, all 14, it's not a vote, but it's a discussion, said we really think there are other ways for us to, at least maybe through the fall, still be interacting very well, but just reduce any within school exposure. So we're the Friday update, I said we're trying to get visitors in. We may tack a little bit differently to say for the fall, and we'd evaluate, let's have our back-to-school nights virtual. We actually had much better turnout with that, as I'm told, last year, and Hastings isn't alone in that. That was true in my previous district. Not sure about teacher-student, student-teacher conferences in November. That might be a little bit different. We're also waiting for guidance on what it means for spectators, and to be consistent, we then think what it means for our musicians and other performers, but we're waiting for that guidance. But I had told the leadership team I would be sharing this tonight with the board. Again, this is a discussion, it's an update, but that's there are a number of decisions left, but that's one. Whether, I know we've had questions about will there be visitors in the building, but that's a long statement to say very simply, right now we're leaning to saying for the fall, no, because we want to minimize any kinds of exposures in the building so we can be all in school. So that's quite a lengthy update. I hope it's helpful to you. Certainly, you may want to have some questions, discussion on this now, but again, it's designed as an update, and we're trying to do this for a while at each board meeting, so you as a board and the community who's watching can hear.
Great.
Questions, should we,
Yeah, please, go ahead.
is it appropriate time?
Yeah.
And if I left Maureen and Melissa anything out, let me know. Sorry, go
I don't
ahead,
wanna jump the queue. Just a couple questions. I know, I was thinking about this at home, there's sort of a divide between the grades that the children are old enough to get vaccinated and the ones that can't. And, when I'm thinking about what's the most, likely vector for those children the younger children to be exposed, it seems to be at lunchtime. And I know that the quarantine policy is gonna be that if they eat outside, that there's really no risk of going into quarantine. I'm wondering if there's anything that we could do, to make it easier to eat outside. So to, rain canopies or any sort of warmth or anything like that, because, 25% of the days you get precipitation. As you go into later fall, it goes to a third of the days you have precipitation. Even if it's not raining on the students, things get wet, they don't want to be there. So whatever we could do to let them eat outside as much as possible for as long as possible, this really significantly reduces their risk. And I did hear reports from students that last year, some kids were worried about going into quarantine, so they actually skipped lunch. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it's something I heard. So I just wondered if there's something we could do on that. And then,
I'm gonna,
Oh, sure.
that is the
Yeah, we-
plan.
But we actually have some good news, it'd be fresh news, so I think, but go ahead. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
been
so-
doing some hard work on this since Friday.
Yeah, so that was,
And we were listening. I hope that people say, gosh, we're listening and we're gonna tack a wee bit different direction than where I was to some parents last week, so.
right.
we're
Yes,
excited.
so when, we had a lot of, when I returned last week, we started to discuss the possibility of that. And again, to your point, at Hillside in particular, where children aren't vaccinated, and lunch is a place in which kids could either be exposed or then be subject to quarantine. So we met, Joe, myself, Amy, and then with Bill, and then kind of on the side, and we came back and we came up with a plan. So yes, we are planning to have lunch option outside for Hillside, and we are ordering tents in order to do so. And it actually worked very well down here last year, so there may be a day that maybe one group may need to sit inside, but we feel that even if we're planning to have the majority of our students outside, offer that option as much as possible. But then also, if there are some children that need to eat inside for a particular reason, the fact that then the density will be
it's
so
safer
much
for them,
reduced,
absolutely.
it'll also help us. So I know I spoke to Joe earlier, and we were just like looking for the different, we needed some more tables and some more tents and things. So he actually mentioned to me earlier that they did in fact order the tables. We had some tents and we're going to purchase some more, so that's.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and any board who's been tracking this or have seen some emails, probably the most active set of emails I've received have been from Hillside parents about that exact issue. And we started to respond that I had actually walked the space, the facility with Maureen and Joe. We weren't sure. And then give Maureen credit, because she got back Friday from Westminster break, and I said, we're getting more
Yeah, right,
questions.
yeah.
What's really important here, we're watching elsewhere in the nation what's happening, and we want to be all in. And so, really what happened is that Joe, Maureen, Amy, go put your heads together. I'm not saying do it, I'm just saying do another analysis. And they came back and said, yeah, we can make it work.
Right.
So we've got students at the table here who may have lived this last year, but we feel pretty good about Farragut Middle School, obviously. We feel pretty good about the high school. And now we think we'll have a solution at Hillside. So it's a great question, and fortunately, we're answering it the way you probably want us to answer it tonight. I can't guarantee that every time you ask a question.
No, it's just one other thing, one other risk, and I don't know if it's a real one, but, one amelioration of risk, is an ability for children to sort of self-check themselves when they're in school. Because I know, there's so many facilities that have those, no-touch thermometers, those sorts of things. And I was just trying to go through in my head, if a child feels unwell, sometimes, they want to go to school anyway because they want to see their friends, or, sometimes they don't realize they feel unwell until they get to school. And I don't know if it's useful, but I wonder if it's worth thinking about the ability to set up some stations where a child might just, if they feel a little well, they could go check themselves a little bit, rather than having to go to the nurse. And, I don't know, it's been a while since I've been a kid. I don't know, I'm trying to get in their mind a little bit, but just want to throw it out there as something that might be.
I'm probably going to cut to a different direction on this. From what I understand, I've already been interacting with the nurses. You've got great nurses here. Great nurses. And great nurses anywhere right now they're in high demand. And school nurses have really put through it in the nation. And so you got 3 really good ones. I think it's critical that we develop the trust such, and I think it's already there, but for any who may not, and have the faculty, staff work to trust, go to the nurse. As our medical advisors clearly told me last week, temperatures don't tell us anything anymore.
Yeah, correct.
And the guidance now is that it don't tell us, and so actually,
Or
I
the
guess I'd
type of
say in my
infection.
district last year, we weren't checking temperatures, and we got pressure for it, but now fortunately, I guess for me, so I get the question, but I really want, just personally and professionally speaking, to build the trust such the child or young student goes to the nurse.
Yeah,
Because any of the self-checking at home, yes, and temperature's part of that there, but in the building, I think they need to be going to the
Yeah,
nurse.
and I
don't know,
think-
Melissa, or Lynn, if you wanna add to that.
I agree. I think it's really important, and I think as we're trying to make sure that we're supportive of monitoring any kind of potential, any opportunities for spread, that we're really on top of any, just supporting students in that way. And I do think that, to echo what Bill has said, we have phenomenal nurses. We are very, very lucky in this district. And so they are very much on top of things. They're very communicative regionally, and they can help point students in the right direction if need be. So I think it would be good to continue along that course as well.
Yeah, I want to add something to what Alex said, or if I could, maybe, I'm not sure if it will add more light to what you were saying. I would absolutely say that if anyone is sick, even if it's not COVID related, you should see the school nurse. That's why they've been hired and that's why they are there. However, I'm also aware that in certain schools, I'm not sure if it happens here in Hastings, that the nurse is working with guidelines that it's not, this nurse is not implementing based on his or her profession as a nurse, who is figuring that these symptoms are not COVID related, so this child is just having some allergy. But then this child gets sent home because the principal may say that this is the rule. Anyone who, I had a situation where someone had gummies, a child had gummies in the mouth and spat it out in the mask, and the parent was called to come get this person and take this person home. And the child is not sick, but because it was taking some, like spitting out something, automatically the guideline says you should go home. So I'm not saying it's Hastings. I'm just saying that sometimes if, I think to your point, we should trust the input from the nurse, or else parents will want to say that, let my child, I know what I've told my child, let my child determine to what extent they feel sick before you send them home. So I think sometimes, and we cannot trust all kids to be able to assess that. So I think it's two issues here, but the first to go, as you said, is the nurse, and we should trust the nurse with whatever administrative guidelines to be able to be equitable in making the decision when to send a child home or not.
The other thing I was just gonna mention, and I'm thinking about this holistically, I think a lot of our teachers, and particularly at Hillside where there's more support staff, beyond the nurses, I think many of the teachers, I think, are tuned in to their children, and I think, especially during this time with COVID, many, at times, whether the child, sometimes they were referred, like if they felt as though the child may not feel as well, I think there's like a heightened awareness, I think, about children's behavior, if there was somebody at recess and they weren't feeling well, but, we do have excellent nurses, and I think one of the things in terms of, especially over the course of the year, children that either have allergies or things like that, like they're either documented, so there's a time in which, like, if that was something you had, then they could make that assessment that it was in fact, something
They know
that
the
was, they
kid's
had,
history.
right? But I do think maybe just, reminding our staff to keep an extra eye, especially on the younger students to, just in case they're reluctant to go, just to encourage them to go to the nurse.
I did want to add one thing, though. I appreciate the idea that where we can, throughout any school day, thinking about opportunities to empower students, right? In terms of that self-advocacy piece.
Because that's really what I'm trying to get at,
Yeah.
it's the idea that, especially for younger kids, it might be scary to go to the nurse. I know that, my daughter seems to know all the nurses very well, and I've always found the nurses to be very, collegial and friendly and warm and open. But, just throw out there something that might help especially the youngest kids, maybe be introduced to the nurse or take a tour of it, just to not be scared of it, not be scared of the process. It might be useful. I mean, my only feeling is the more we can keep a child who might be ill, home or out of the school as fast as possible, it just helps, it's.
Maybe there's an opportunity just to have the nurse come stop by each class and say, especially at Hillside. I don't know,
Yeah,
Middle and
Hillside,
high
really.
might not be as important, and just say something welcoming, and if you feel this way, don't feel shy, come see me, something like that. And
Yeah.
perhaps Amy did that last year, I'm not sure.
I think, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take, but he has his hands up.
I'm not sure if it's my place to jump in here. I think there's another obstacle in the high school, which is that kids don't want to go to the nurse because they don't want to be sent home.
Correct.
For kids that, in taking a lot of hard classes, missing a day can be really tough. And then you've also got this sort of sports list that they created last year. I don't know if that was you guys, but if you miss a day of school, you can't go to practice
Correct.
or a game. And when people are trying to rack up enough practices to be able to participate, or they want to impress their coaches, they're not going to want to miss a school day, whether or not they're sick, and they're not going to go to the nurse. And I don't know if you guys are worried about that because the vaccination rates are pretty high in high school, but
It's
I think that
interesting to
might be
hear,
a
though.
problem.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly
yeah,
that.
I mean, there's some fascinating pluses to COVID, because I think these are excellent points, because, in communities such as Hastings, and the pressure at home is, I gotta work, go to school, right? Pressure of students, as you just said, is I gotta achieve, I gotta, if I'm not feeling well. So at least we're having those conversations, because you don't wanna create incentives to have ill people there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I can, supers across the region have noted as they listen, these kind of conversations are happening, so we can try and help people make the better decision. But I think just, setting up so the nurses have the trust,
Yeah.
and this is the advantage of the scale here, smaller, is you can try and avoid those, bad incentives from last year.
I just want to quickly add this, to the student's point, and also to what my colleague has said here, that I know I'm not sure how much money can go into this, but if there could be a rapid test for COVID, because most of the sending home that I think has happened since COVID is when there is that, ooh, you may have COVID, according to the guidelines, you are having these symptoms, go home, right? So I think that if we could do the rapid test, I went on vacation. Before my husband drove us home, I said I needed the rapid test because people were not masking in where we were. And so we all, I'm such a nerd that way, but we all went straight to Dobbs Ferry and did a rapid test before we drove home because I didn't want any COVID in the house. But I don't know how we could do that if the rapid test is just within less than an hour.
Yeah, medical advisors are strong on the PCR, and because there's a lot of false positives with the rapid, and then you create the problem you're trying to avoid. And so I think it's important for us to promote the optional program the county's gonna have, which is gonna be a saliva-based PCR
Okay.
with a 24-hour response period results. So we wanna promote that.
That more than, I was saying the rapid test mainly for students that come to school that are not feeling sick, and then all of a sudden they are under the weather, and especially with ladies, that time of the month, they can have a high temperature and then they are being sent home. It's not, because people are guessing it's COVID, right? And so like
Yeah,
he
well, we-
rightly said, they don't want to go to the nurse, but we also don't want to discourage that. So yes, I know the rapid test is not that accurate, but at least it's not, it's a way to just, say that you may have to take the test before you come again, but not to send the child home. This is just a thought, it's your place to decide the
Right, right.
details.
Yeah.
But before we shift to that, I mean, this is just a comment I wanted to make. You had mentioned something about the honors qualitative check, which I think was a great idea about the honors thing. What I want to ask is, do you intend to connect that with some kind of, it's not correlation, but are you going to correlate that with the incidences that you receive in order to see the impact evaluation that is happening when you compare this honest roll with what was
So-
done before? I'm just curious.
And that's a really interesting question. We hadn't thought down the path that far, but meaning if we do this, meaning put in this honor system and we have the signatures, we'll have to see how that works. And it's voluntary to sign, but we could then go back and see, is there any
It would be great.
relationship to asking people to do this on their own basis?
Thanks.
The reason most people aren't saying do that required morning check is there was a lot of logistical demands with it, and it wasn't really producing information that was helpful. I think we're actually in a really good place in terms of keeping students in school. Because we now have two ways if exposed, you don't have to quarantine.
Right.
Wear the mask and/or vaccinate. And so with that, I think can greatly minimize the quarantines and the effects of, I'm gonna miss my sport or my music or my theater, or I'm gonna be out of class for a while. So, these are all really good things for us to keep thinking.
Thanks for the comment, Gus. That's
Yeah, of course.
useful to hear.
I mean, last thing I'd say, which as Maureen and Melissa knows, with the leadership today, I said, we have to bring calm. I got a big voice, I'm kind of lively, but I said, on COVID-19, we gotta bring calm. We know what to do. We know what to do. And we've been through this, I think, very, very well in Hastings.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna focus on SEL a lot which may be another question from the board, as it should be. I think we're doing pretty well with lack of academic lag, if there's a double negative case somewhere. But let's relax. We're gonna work on safety issues, health issues, and have people in school. And that's what gonna be, and we'll adjust as we need to keep people in school.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
the update, and to the entire team, and Maureen and Melissa as well, for working through all of these, both knowns and still TBD knowns, as we continue to get updates each week, which also, just to acknowledge you, Bill, I really appreciate your style and way of getting that information out to the public. I know I've heard from a lot of people that they really appreciate the clarity of those messages. Okay, school opening update. Is that something you've got some?
Yeah, and again, this will be a lot briefer. This should be all the time, not COVID. I mean, we're trying to say, we're about school, not COVID, but I think a lot of what you saw as a board is really key right now, that we just want to emphasize for the first couple board meetings, we'll do this as just a chance to update you, and Maureen and Melissa may just want to add a little bit here. But from a standpoint of facilities, I mentioned earlier, people working really hard to have everything ready. Some of the updates sent out, maybe, Melissa, you might hit a few highlights on sort of the academic side, ready for school opening, but I don't know if you want to add anything here.
Sure. There's been a lot of work going on in the area of curriculum instruction and assessment. Just a couple of highlights. So we have our 2 Project Lead the Way courses coming in. So we've had 2 faculty members going through professional learning on that. Middle school mathematics has been working very hard. So we're transitioning in a new resource, Big Ideas. So we spent some time together, and additional time was requested. The group was learning very well together and has done a great job of unpacking. There's been work around MTSS, our multi-tiered system of supports, and that has happened at Hillside. The team there has been working. It will be a key area of focus for Farragut Middle School. There's been social studies work that's happened, professional learning in all 3 buildings. Elementary school, middle school, and high school started in June. So it was June for the high school, July, and for the elementary school, then August. And there's some new guidance coming down around civics and around culturally responsive practice. We've been working on that. I work together with Dr. Janice Mateo Toledo, and we've been marrying guidance from the state on this culturally responsive framework, a sustaining education framework, and the roadmap that's been provided to us, coupled with input that we received from the English department, the social studies department, and so we've been developing a 3-year plan for that. And I'm sure I am missing something. We've done a lot, actually. There's been planning with work around the upcoming word study with literacy for Dr. Gravity Goldberg at the elementary school. And we are we're continuing to align with the new New York P12 science learning standards. And so from across the district, the science department was working very hard this summer. So kudos to our faculty. We've also upgraded Sparks also at the elementary school, and transitioning back in to prepare for more work and courageous conversations in the middle school. And I think that's really the crux of some highlights. It's been a busy summer, and we've been having a good time learning together, so it's been great.
That's great. Thank you, Melissa. I'm assuming that covers report from the Assistant Superintendent
Yes, it
of
does.
Curriculum Instruction?
It
Okay.
does.
Move with efficiency on this,
Yeah.
And
Can
I
I-
also want to just welcome back Sabine as student liaison, and Gus Renzen, our new student liaison this year, so welcome.
Melissa, can I ask if you had mentioned you had received inputs from the teachers, obviously, you mentioned social studies and others regarding, and of course, the framework that the Department of Education is presenting to all schools to follow the culturally responsive framework. I'm just wondering if maybe there's a way to, again, this is an operational thing, but somehow, some way, however it gets done operationally, if we can hear student voices in like the varying ethnic groups. You know, what are our Caucasian students saying? What are our African American students saying? What are the Indian students? Like all these different students, if there could be some kind of survey that will collect the social atmosphere that they, in order to get into that, how they experience. I mean, I have my personal data from another institution, but I think it's helpful because it throws in this amazing light. Like, it's unbelievable just to hear even white students talk about things that doesn't impact them directly. And they don't talk about it because they don't know even where to start before they assume some white savior mentality for other people that they feel they are being harmed, right? In an emotional way. And not to say it's the teacher's fault, but the framework is not allowing that culturally responsive education to occur. So I think that may be helpful if something like that gets drafted, to hear the separate opinions, not as one body, because I've realized in the past sometimes like students are saying, and I'm asking, who are these students? Did you disaggregate them to know who is saying what, or you just said all students, right? Because it's not helpful when it's done that way.
That's great, and I know Janice has some individual input from the affinity group members. And we anticipate having that across all 3 buildings. But to your point, the Panorama survey, the social emotional learning survey, does allow us to disaggregate, and that will be a very important thing. And I fully agree. I think whenever we can have student input and student voice, that's really critical for students to be able to share what their own experiences are, to help inform, you know, what their schools are like. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Maureen, do you have something you want?
I don't have a formal report, but I, again, just want to highlight the work of our facilities team, as Bill had mentioned, and really, it's pretty incredible to kind of see what goes on over the summer, and as you got an opportunity to see tonight, the work that has been done in just actually just reopening the building each year, and, you know, there's quite a bit that goes on, even beyond, you know, upgrades, just logistically moving things and cleaning the spaces, and they did a terrific job. And again, as you were also able to see tonight, our construction is continuing to move along. At the next board meeting, I will do more of the formalized update, kind of showing pictures and things, and kind of update you on the schedule of the both the addition at Hillside. By the next meeting, we'll have a better understanding of the time frame for which the middle school auditorium work will start, and we'll have some updates to share with you on the music suite here. So we're
Great.
very pleased. And as Melissa was mentioning, what was so nice about this summer, you know, although we still have our COVID planning and to open schools, it felt more the way it had been in previous years. So there was a lot of teachers, as Melissa had mentioned, working in the building, and just kind of seeing all the activity going on, and you know, thinking and being excited about all the building projects was really a much different summer than we had last year. So we're excited to kind of open up schools again. So that's all. Thank
I
you.
want to thank Maureen. I mean, we did a walkthrough today. I know you do a lot of work, but I just want to thank you for all the details that you were just able to spew out when I did personally ask you. You know, you had the details on your fingertips, and that was very impressive, personally.
Oh,
And
thank
thank you.
you.
Yeah.
Dr. Lang.
I left off one thing that's important, and all these things that we've talked about at the board leadership level. We've begun drafting a year-long agenda for the board. So plugging in for all the months, what's the typical things you need to, as a board, grapple with, and then plugging in some key work we would suggest. And I was reminded by, for example, be it the Panorama Survey, SEL, or other things. And so I'm gonna share that in our weekly president's meeting this week, so they can get to the board at the next meeting as a draft. And you have a goal session coming up, because I think, and thank you, Melissa, for drafting this, but it already gets very clear for you on what's you need to do in a given month, and thus where do you have space to be going after some of these other questions. So that was supposed to be in the school opening update. You'll see that very shortly, and then I would hope actually at the next meeting you'd have a draft you could look at.
Great.
I just say also, I want to acknowledge from the walk around, because it was really news to me, the range of work that Joe and his crew are able to do, and it's impressive, and it would, you know, I just hope that everybody can sort of appreciate how much gets done and how much they're able to do in-house. It's
Yeah.
quite an accomplishment.
No, that's,
And, you know, just not to belabor this guy, but, you know, all of the work is a culmination. We meet with all the administrators, and there's a lot of thought, like, in terms of how we use spaces, and Joe's team is really great because, you know, they're constantly, beyond even at a district level, working with special, you know, just kind of planning and bringing whatever their needs are in that particular year, you know, so, you know, I think we're very fortunate, because without the team we do have, a lot of what has occurred would not be possible, and just the flexibility and their, I sometimes don't even understand how they get the work done, quite frankly, because it's pretty amazing, and they take great pride in it, so.
I saw, and
Yeah.
they deserve it.
Yeah.
It really was impressive.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. All really great points. And to just underline what Bill said regarding, really what I've thought about is kind of efficacy of the school district, and thinking of a framework that we use to measure, well, how do we know that we're effective? Damaris brought up one point. There's a variety of other points. I think it's something that, for a variety of reasons, we've not really clarified, and there's always been some fire that comes up, or pandemic, that has kept us from having a robust conversation around multiple indicators of success and efficacy, and I think it's gonna be great as we try to push forward with really a robust framework this year. So great. Okay, student report. We've got 2 student leaders on the board with us this year. Sabine is back for a repeat performance here of more in person, hopefully this year than last year.
Yeah.
So perhaps both of you, Sabine, you could tell us a little bit. You told us last year, but refresh
Right.
us a little about you, why you're here, what has interest in being here, maybe just a little bit about your interests at school. And Gus, if you could do the same as well, would be great. And then any report that you have.
All right, so my name is Sabine Hincady, and I'm going to be a senior this year. In terms of my involvement in Hastings, I play soccer and softball, and I'm also in high school band. And what really intrigued me to this position was mainly because I have a younger sister in Hillside, and she is in the special needs program. So that was interesting to me to get sort of like insider perspective on that from the Board of Education. So before I introduce Gus, I actually have a couple points I want to mention. On Saturday, the class of 2022, my grade, now officially seniors, kicked their year off with a tie-dye event by the Farragut Playground. Senior shirts were distributed, and students had the opportunity to tie-dye their shirt with festive green and yellow colors. And I am very much looking forward to seeing many of my peers wearing their shirts on the first day of school next week. And JV and varsity sports started today, even though teams were limited to the indoor weather because of the weather. So yeah, that's all that I want to say. So now I'll give Gus the floor, give him the opportunity to say a few words.
Alrighty, hi everyone. I'm Gus Renzen, so I'm going to be a junior at the high school right here. Just a little bit about me. I play sports year-round for the school, cross-country, track, and baseball. I'm on the board of Project Share, which is an awesome nonprofit that works right out of the high school. And I'm also in the band. I'm not nearly as good as Sabine. But, I do some other random stuff. But I'm just, super excited to see how the school works at a more systemic, at a higher level, and figure out how you can sort of create solutions to some problems that we see every day at that higher level, and see how you guys help do your job and how it works. So I'm super excited to get to work and start hearing everything and being a part of this process. I wrote down a couple things, but I think it's pretty redundant. All basically the same stuff as Sabine. I think people are starting to get their feet wet with sports and some activities starting up, and the student body I think is looking forward to a little bit more consistency this year. And I think everything Dr. McCurshey's been saying is heartening for me, and I'm sure will be to everyone, that the goal is to keep people in and to keep some continuity and messaging and how things work.
That's great. Thank you.
Both,
Yeah, and I will say that, one of the things I think we really strive to do is get more student voice in every decision. That happens at the board level. You sharing things with us that you see that we might not be seeing. Happens at across the district, the survey level, and I think it's probably something we could do better at. We've done pretty well, we could do better at. So, one of the things that always strikes me is that you're sitting in this meeting with a very different perspective, a very different, like, Monday than we had, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or any day, or weekend. So please feel free, whether it's at a meeting or even in between meetings, to send a note if something comes up. If you have something that you want to share, if you need a little extra time one meeting, if you ever want to do that, feel free, please, to reach out to us, because I think your voice is critical and in many ways sees a lot more than we see on a regular basis. So thanks for the time that you guys are putting in here.
Doug, may I add?
Please.
As the elected board members know, my door is open to the board, so I think, that's something let's talk about that. If there are times and you may have done this in the past, I can't speak to that, but it's great that Hastings has this happen. Other districts I've worked with have done the same, and your voice is critical. So if beyond these meetings you say, hey, Dr. McCursey, I want to come in and chat about things, that would be great, because it might also, you'll give me perspective, maybe I can give you some perspective, we include some other people. But anything I can do to deepen your experience in this role, that's part of that.
third that. I agree, you know, it's, when I've watched board meetings in the past before being on the board, so often what the students said was like, wow, that's really sort of interesting or really uniquely from their perspective. So I agree with what they've said, you know, take it as far as you want, really, because it's extremely valuable for all of us to hear. You know?
Hi, Sabine and Gus, welcome. And I'm just going to ask some questions because I'm not sure what the structure works here in Hastings. So are you guys part of the Student Government Association here, or do you have a body of student government? I'm just wondering.
Right, so part of this position requires that along with going to these meetings, we go to student union meetings. So that's what I did this past year, and that's what Gus will be doing this year. I also am just conveniently, I got elected to be the student union secretary. So I have that position as well. But we'll both be attending student union meetings throughout the year.
Okay, so do you guys do any collaborative work with other school districts, or is just within the student government here?
Not really. I mean, most of the stuff that happens at student union meetings is figuring out fundraising and student events and school spirit and stuff like that. So there's not really much communication with other schools. But definitely there are some times where stuff that goes on in those types of meetings will be relayed here as well.
And how do students get, are all students automatically part of the union? How do they get recruited? How do they?
There's elections at the end of every school year for the next year. So in like May or June, I think, were the last elections. And everyone in the grade, there's a Google form. You could hang posters up. You could give out cookies, whatever, stuff like that. So.
Yeah. But again, congratulations and welcome.
I'm just going to briefly say that I'm really happy you guys are here, because really all the work that we do is to try and, you know, make sure that we're reflecting and implementing policies. I think that the comments that you made, Gus, even when you said, like, was it because of you that this thing happened? Actually, what you had mentioned was not something that we had made happen. But I mean, the whole point of having your perspectives is that we want to know that we're making informed decisions. And so I think it's really important what Doug said in terms of you seeing this not as a venue that you just show up, you know, every 2 weeks and you have to give, you know, the report that you provide, which is certainly insightful, but that even in the intervening time that you are reaching out to us to, you know, keep us abreast of what you actually see on the ground. You know, I have 2 high schoolers now as well, one who's on the student union, and so I really appreciate also the work that you guys do as high school students with very packed schedules. So thank you for making the time to make this commitment. It makes us feel like what we're doing is, you know, gonna be more impactful for having your perspective on it. So
Awesome.
welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay, public comment. Do we have anything, Melissa? No? Okay, and for those of you at home, there's no public, so. I mean, you are public, but you can't comment right now. Okay, so moving on to business items, which is 6A, is a lot of items always in the beginning of the year. 28 items. Before I jump in, I just wanted Maureen to walk us through 13 and 14, just to remind board members who might not know, which is moving money to the reserves. Just give us a little refresher on the money that's being moved, why that money's being moved, when we made that decision.
So basically, at the end of the school, our fiscal year is 6/30. We do move some monies before that, like when we have certain pots, but we really are closing our full set of books, really the end of July, right? So it's the end of our fiscal year. And then, based upon, where we close our year, we then appropriate, so basically, like, as an example, last year, we, had budgeted certain revenues based upon, what the governor at that time said, we're not gonna, you know, the state aid's gonna be reduced, and then as we know, there was monies that came in later, you know, and although that was wonderful and we were really thrilled about it, you know, we ended up with, more revenues that we had initially anticipated, so when you have those additional, in this case, revenues and sometimes, expenditure savings, at the end of the year, we have to make recommendations to put that kind of into pots of money, which are legally allowed to be established. So they're not, they need to have a real purpose, and you're capped based upon maybe, as an example, our retirement reserve it can only, we can only keep a certain amount of dollars in there, and it's based upon our obligations, like our subsequent obligations. So it's not as though we could put $10 million in there, not that we have 10 million, but most of the reserves, they're legally established, and they have some requirements around them. So this is pretty typical. You'll typically see in June and in July or August, these type of movements. And what we're doing is making a recommendation to put monies into certain accounts. And the capital, we're restoring the monies that we had previously taken out to kind of start the project. So that's those there. Can I just mention one other business item? I just want to thank for the contribution from the Cy Gruberg Scholarship Foundation. You know, in the memo, we see that Dr. Gruber, am I saying his last name right, was a former guidance counselor in the district, and as we can see, his family, he has always funded the scholarship, you know, when he was still with us, and part of when he passed, you know, he had left this money to the district, and I mean, it's a considerable amount of money that, you know, that they left for us, so we're very thankful for that, because, you know, it benefits our students, and based upon the amount they've given us, it'll be, you know, active for way past the time I'm here anymore, so I just wanted to thank.
That's great. Do you know when he was a counselor here?
1967 to 1985.
Wow,
Oh, thank you.
Good homework.
Yeah.
good research.
May I also please draw the attention of the board to item 27? We're looking for a little bit of guidance on that. We do have a retroactive personnel appointment request. We received a resignation. We anticipate to have the vacancy filled. However, it will be between board meetings. In this particular situation, what we'd like to do is be able to start that person pending all of our legal paperwork and fingerprint clearance, and then do the retroactive appointment. And then the second piece of that is that we do anticipate a couple of these situations coming up, even in close proximity to this current Board of Education meeting. And we would like some guidance on the practice of retroactive appointments, if we might consider it more generally on a rare occasion where we need to get somebody started in between, you know, a couple week span of meetings.
And if I may follow on that, is the mic on? Can you hear me? Great. Melissa set that up very gently. I'll be a little more direct. We're asking your permission to proceed for sure with the one listed here, and Melissa can explain actually the grade's a little different than in the memo. There's been some good decisions at the Hillside level to maximize talent. But we may have several others in the next couple of days. Not quite clear, and I can't get specific because some announcements have not been made by staff, the ones we anticipate. But the same rationale that Melissa wrote in the memo would exist for the others, that we want to open the year with the students, with the educators they'll have the whole time, and wondering if there would be the ability to have you as a board approve, giving, frankly, the superintendent authority to do that, then come in for a retroactive appointment, so that we could start the year. And maybe only, and I think the question Melissa's asking is not to establish that as a new permanent procedure, but at least for right now, know that there's this one, plus there could be as many as 2 or 3 more in the next couple of days. And they may not be full classroom appointments, but appointments that do have to come to the board. Do you want to, is that fair?
That's accurate, right? And so to your earlier point, so the resignation that we received was a kindergarten position. However, we had just hired a familiar face back, actually, to a 3rd grade position. And that's Marissa Barbera, and she has worked in kindergarten, so she will assume that kindergarten position. We will now be hiring for Elise Malone's position, but the position itself will sit in 3rd grade. So that's what we're looking to do for this particular
Can I,
appointment.
before we move to that, I actually read it, and I also got the email and everything, and I know exactly, but I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. If that's, I mean, I totally trust, and I would, let me say this before I go ahead. I fully trust the judgment of administrators in selecting the teachers that they select to teach the class. So this has nothing to do with what I'm about to ask, has nothing to do with questioning in that. I know for a fact in higher education, we have to hire adjuncts. Say today we had a meeting, adjuncts coming in and out, and we had to sort of deal with that. And sometimes we can't get all the team on the scheduled time. We have to do quick decisions. So I get exactly what you're saying, but I did not see, this may be Doug's question. I didn't see a hiring policy in the board doc. I was just trying to see whether the board has a hiring policy. I could not locate that. And then, so that being said, I am not sure what kind of practices the administration has in place, the process and practice of hiring, just so that there is that equity approach in hiring individuals, considering the rich pool of individuals that are seeking positions, and in that equitable way. So this may not be a response that we can get right now, or I can get right now,
Well,
but
I think, if I may, I think it's a very important question for the board to feel comfortable. I think at the policy level, I think somewhere there in the policy, but Doug, you know better than I would, but is the sense of giving some amount of authority to a you're empowered by the state of New York to then say to the superintendent, you have the authority
correct.
to hire, and by the way, we're gonna hold you accountable.
Yeah, it is
superintendent.
there. I
Right,
see
so
that.
Right, so then, but we can answer the procedural question quite clearly, and I think some combination of Melissa and Maureen, but all positions are posted, and all efforts are made to encourage candidates of all backgrounds to apply, and candidates of all backgrounds are reviewed. There are certain certification requirements that will come into play based on certain positions, which we do have to look at those. There is a very thorough, right now we know for one of the openings, we have 300 candidates for the elementary. So this is, people want to work in your district, or I guess our district, sorry. They want to work in our district. But then it's working through those 300 very thoroughly from a small committee-based level, which, you know, maybe Melissa, you might speak to that, because I think the board should hear the process, because there is
Correct.
a very thorough process, but fundamentally, it is about encouraging all candidates, encouraging all backgrounds to apply, and then working through who will be the best candidate.
So the
So-
selection, the working through part is what
Yeah.
I'm interested. In
Yeah.
terms of the selection of those on the committee, how does Hastings select hiring committee members? And what is the turnover of those individuals? Do you keep calling the same person on that same committee to keep hiring? I know that the leaders must be there, but in terms of teachers or other individuals that are involved in the decision-making, I know sometimes you reach out to community members to be on some of these boards. Is there a system in place that determines the selection of the committee? And you don't need to answer this,
Well,
but I'm just saying in the future.
No, there is I think we should answer it. 'Cause I think
Okay.
we should- I mean, if I were you and I'm coming to say, can you give us authority to make a decision, you're gonna wanna know how are you gonna make it, right?
Correct,
So,
correct.
Melissa, why don't you lay out what?
Yeah, so if I mean, at each building, it's been handled at the building level. And what we do is we make sure that at the building level, there is, I can just give an example over the summer. So not all faculty are in over the summer. So typically it is, and even during the school year, there is generally a canvassing email to ask who is interested and able to participate in the process. So the first round is resume review, and that's by personnel. So before anything else happens, Lynn Walker, personnel, is culling resumes, and we use an online application system, two of them actually, AppleTrack and OLAS. And so we're recruiting candidates throughout the region, and those are the avenues for collecting resumes. She does the preliminary screening in terms of making sure that there are appropriately certified people. We do have diversity recruitment efforts in place. That starts at personnel. And then what ends up happening is that those resumes then move to the building leadership. So the building principal also does the resume review. From there, what ends up happening is a screening process where there are brief screening interviews, many of them. And then from there, the pool starts getting smaller. And in the screening interviews, what we did put into place that was newer since I arrived originally is the screening process is not just happening by one administrator. It's been more than one administrator. So making sure that there are some additional eyes on screening the candidates, eyes and ears. Then it moves to the volunteers that I was just describing, people who are interested. There have been, in my experience, consistently, there's a parent on the committee, they're either from PTSA or SEPTA. In the past, there's been outreach to say who from PTSA, SEPTA is available to sit on this committee. Then there is a formal process that's involved. Typically, after that process, there are student interviews. I'm just taking us through the last, the assistant principal hires, for example. There were student interviews. And then there often is an additional task, whether it be a writing sample, and that would depend on the candidate that's being hired. So that's, that is really what's been happening in terms of process. It is handled at the building level if it's a building level teacher hire. There has been amongst the leadership team a firm diversity recruitment effort. It's something that's been at the forefront. And we have actually debriefed our hiring process in terms of thinking about whom we've hired over the years and, and who our candidates have been. And that's it. And we're looking for the most qualified people that we can find.
I have one last question.
Well, one addition is, after it's from the building level, then the building level brings to the central
And then
administration.
Then I interview them.
They
Got
interview,
it.
and at that point, it's winnowed way down, and then ultimately, unless there's some uncommon situation, one or two are brought to the superintendent to say, this is who we recommend, who
Got
then
it.
would be brought to the board.
I have one quick last question. Is there a rubric that you are aware of that the
Yes.
building is using with the equal weights and points that they are in a numeric quantitative way to
Yes.
determine that? Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
And personnel has that developed, and it's something that's consistently used.
Okay,
But I think you'd understand, there's the rubric with the numeric, and you have to balance that with some qualitative.
Of
pieces,
course,
because
absolutely.
If it were pure numbers,
I understand that, yeah.
Can I just say also, just, because I've been in the district for a long time and seen a lot of the hires, and I'm always someone prepared to be skeptical, and I've really been sort of bowled over by the seriousness of the process and the fairness of it and the realness of it, and just, it's, I think that they really do a fantastic job of working hard to make a real accurate decision, and so I've been impressed by it.
Hiring, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important things that we can do as an organization, is making sure we get the right people on the bus. And it's really critical. And to your point, the system really understands that and takes hiring very seriously, to the point where if we haven't found the right person, we will figure out an alternative or repost.
I mean, this is a society's issue where sometimes people go through all these processes and it doesn't matter. It's like somehow they know who they want to pick. And it's been a concern. I mean, community members have expressed that. Some individuals have been here longer than I have been, like forever, very older folks that, and they've expressed how some of them used to work here and they've seen how it doesn't matter. It's just, the position is already filled before it's actually filled. And so that has been a concern. I was reminded again, and I said I would just ask so that it's publicly known how the process is now being done. Probably that was what was being done in their day when they were here, and I know in certain areas it gets done. I personally sometimes don't waste my time in such hiring processes because they already know who they want. They are just going through the motion. So I just wanted to just get that clarity out so that it's clear that this is very rigorous. But thank you.
Yes, and there's also a reference check that's very thorough, and that matters a lot, actually, and that has tipped the scales in certain situations.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was a helpful clarification of the process. to the point number 27, I can see how we can approve this. I'm less clear for this one. I'm less clear of kind of the, I don't know what the best, just the open rec, I guess would be called, for something broader. So can we put numbers around it, maybe as a way? And because we're essentially voting on, we're not, it's kind of odd, because we're not voting on something here. Is it 2 people? Is it 3? Is it?
I think we definitely have the one that we're anticipating
this one.
finishing up a hiring process. There are, I think, 2 more.
Yeah, so what's emerged, there's definitely the one, so we wrote the memo around the one, and things happen. So we've learned today there could be 2 or 3 more. And while some are classroom, some are not, some are all directly working with students. And we would, for the arguments here, we'd love to have that flexibility to have them start right away. So, and I hear your concerns as a board, so we could say an upward number, or we may just have to look at longer term when we hit these moments and not right now resolve it. But we're just trying to, so the board might be comfortable with saying if we think it's 3 more, but it's a little bit vague, because there's some who say they may be about to announce a change, and you go into the process, have people in a pool.
Right.
So, but I don't know, Melissa Marine, if you.
I would say, including this, there would be at least, it could be between now and the next meeting, maybe 4 at the high, like, if I'm thinking about the different, if it like we had another section at Hillside, right, that's a higher, so that's 2 with this. But then the other ones that we're talking about, and there could be some other support staff. And again, there's typically a few that fall, like, even in a normal year, like this, things that, because when people are either going to a new job, this is not completely unusual to have 1 or 2 kind of. I would say 4, would you say 4 is a good number, Melissa? I mean, like that.
What's driving it? Is it resignations that are driving it, or is it?
There are sometimes personal
sizing?
circumstances where
Okay.
somebody takes an unexpected leave, or
Okay.
there are sometimes resignations, sure. Sometimes we hire people and then they notify us that they have something different, right? So I think there are different reasons why that could happen. I can say honestly, it's not an uncommon practice for districts. I mean, it really is something that I've lived in other places. Our intention is always to be fully transparent, and the preference is to go through a process, have it line up perfectly with timing, have the formal board appointment, and then get everyone started. In this case, when you're thinking about the system, you want students to start the year with the right teacher on the roster. It just decreases everybody's anxiety and helps the transitioning. So I would expect this would come in a situation where it's starting the school year. It would be more common that we would need to employ this, because we really do want to get the right roster set up front. But it has not been something that's been an uncommon lived experience for me in other districts around a retroactive appointment, because it is, it is something that is, respected and the board is voting on. However, to your point earlier, we need to make sure we have a formal process, and that doesn't always line up with the vote, so.
Well, I would, just to keep us moving here, I would certainly, we could talk, because I think this maybe exists in other formal capacities in other districts that we don't have. And we'll have to just figure out what that is. I don't think we're talking about that tonight. We'll have to put that into place at some point if the board thinks that's a good idea, which for obvious reasons it could be. But just for the practicality of the moment, I guess we could do something where we could give permission to hire, and will retroactively approve up to 4 positions, if
Correct.
that's what you guys feel comfortable with.
Yeah, actually, that's why I was looking, when I read it prior to the meeting, I was looking for whether the board, we could do a policy. That's why I was looking whether there was a policy for hiring, that, of course, hiring is done by the superintendent in charge of it, but whether there was a board policy on hiring, which may cover retroactive hiring. Because this is uncommon, like, it happens all the time. So
Right.
if we have that, then that creates that liberty. You don't need to be asking this. But the most important is the practice of hiring. If it's
Yeah.
not being done equitably, then that's a problem.
Right.
So, yeah, I think we should work on the retroactive policy so that we don't keep repeating this.
So let's do this for now. Why don't we put in, why don't we vote on 1 through 26 and 28, and then we'll pull 27 out, so just we can get some wording around that separately. Unless we still have, there's 28 items here, we've only talked about 3. Unless other people have other things that they want to bring up, and we'd have to pull those out as well. Besides 27, and some of the other ones we've spoken about, are there some other questions or clarifications or concerns anyone has?
I just have a quick question, but literally they're quick questions. Number 4 references the cafeteria prices. Was there an increase in those?
Yes.
What did they go up from?
I mean, they went up a quarter each,
Okay.
each of them went up.
That's all.
And it was, again, just,
All right.
we had kind of kept it low for a while, but just
That's what I
as we all
figured.
know, the increased cost of.
So it was a
food.
nominal, all
Yeah.
right? And then the other one was number 9 for the safety plan. What are the highlighted differences between this and April?
There were, this is the April plan, there was nothing changed except for personnel, like the new personnel and whoever.
So it was
Each-
just the.
correct,
person.
yeah.
All right, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Great, no problem.
Do I have a motion to approve items 1 through 26 and 28?
So moved.
And a
So
second?
moved. Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Okay. So for item number 27, why don't we amend that, Melissa, to say, in addition to what's noted in the memo, we give the administration, superintendent administration, the ability to hire, and we will retroactively appoint up to 4 positions. So I would say 3 additional positions. If you could note that somewhere, either in the minutes or in the memo. And so with that addition, so it's what's read in the memo with the addition of 3 additional potential hires. Do I have a motion to approve 27 with that amendment to it?
So moved,
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, great. Okay, 6B. Do I have a motion to approve placements for services, CSE and CPSC?
So moved.
A second? All in favor? Okay. 7A through D, well, there's a lot going on here, so let's just take them one at a time. So 7A, appointments. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the appointments in 7A? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the appointments in 7A? A second?
Second?
All in favor? Okay, personnel amendments, 1 through 8. Any questions or concerns around 1 through 8? Okay, do I have a motion to approve 7B, 1 through 8?
I think we just have to amend, I'm sorry that I'm looking at this now. I think on 7B, item number 2, the effective date of that, let me just go, actually 1, 2, 3, and 4 should be the beginning of the school year for teachers, which is August 30th.
So
Because that's
2
when their
days off,
salary
right.
actually is,
Okay.
yeah, August 30th. Because that's their first official workday of the year.
2, 3, and 4, Maureen?
2, 3, and 4 on the amendment, I'm sorry, so instead of September 1, which would be the normal, typical year, but being this year where it would be
Okay.
retroactive to, as you can see, the other, higher dates are out August 30th. Let me just check some-
Okay,
perfect,
for
thank you.
7B, with the change in items 2, 3, and 4 to August 30th, 2021, do I have a motion to approve items 1 through 8?
With the amended,
Yeah, with the
Amended,
amended
sorry,
dates.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
so moved.
Second, okay, all in favor? Okay. Resignations, 4 resignations. Any questions?
I have a question. Do you know why people may be resigning? I know you said, but do you have any form of qualitative data that may suggest, like, I'm just curious.
We do, but that wouldn't be.
Be here
yes,
in this space.
we do.
Correct.
And I remember seeing Elise Malone's wonderful wedding video, or with her children. Sorry to see her go. I know that she was really well respected and loved, as the others likely were as well. I just don't know them as much personally. Do I have a motion to approve resignations in 7C, 1 through 4?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, that's.
Second, sorry.
Dr. Lang, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And leave of absence, 1 leave of absence, a 7D, do I have a motion to approve leave of absence for Matthew Williams?
So
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any questions on Board of Ed minutes from the 5th of August? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Hillside edition of 4th grade section. There's a memo here that's been written, I don't know, it's likely self-explanatory. Maybe we'll just open up to the board first for questions or comments about it.
I just noted that without that addition, it would be having classes with 24 kids, is that accurate, right? And I was just, when I read that, I was like, I coached in the league and in rec league, and even having 5 or 7 kids, it's a lot. So, it looked like a big number, and I would be supportive of adding an additional section for sure. I think it's, especially the kids, the time they've missed, the time that was compromised over the past year and a half, I think it's important that they get a up-close and personal experience, so.
Yeah.
I think there's a few more, right? I think I saw on the list there may even be a few more.
It's
that
actually
are
gone up
enrolled.
since
Yeah.
this
Right,
now.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think there were 25 and some of
It's
this.
already been in the,
Maybe like a hand, but I'm saying with such a
It
small
went
district.
even higher.
Like, that's the challenge for Hastings when we're talking about hiring. It's not so much the planning, it's just that a few children either way for us can like split a section because we're kind of small, so we're impacted more by the things that occur over the summer, so it's a little challenging for us.
That number is quite cuspy for us, and we recently saw the increase, so.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the addition of a 4th grade section at Hillside?
So moved. Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
I was gonna say second. Fine.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Have you gotten any more public comment in, Melissa, since earlier? Have not, okay. Okay, so now we'll open up to Board of Ed comments.
I was thinking of a comment, but I would leave it for, for
That's
the-
okay.
maybe a working session or something.
Anyone else? Board of Ed comments?
I just want to say I'm looking forward to the resumption of the school year on September 1st, and of course echo what everybody else in the room has said in terms of all the gratitude we express to our staff, who's worked wholeheartedly, particularly under very difficult circumstances the past, 18 plus months, and the fact that we've gotten to this point where we're all going to be in the building again is really a testament to people coalescing to make this, a great environmental, a great educational environment for our students. So thank you, and that includes the people around this table as well.
I would second that. It was big concern for me and everyone in the district. And it was when the guidelines came out, it was a huge relief, because I think that, last year was sort of like COVID with some education in it, and I was really hoping that this year would be education with some COVID in it, or maybe hopefully not at all. But it's a really important distinction. I'm thinking about, just the time that passes, and that these kids don't have a second bite at this apple. For my daughter, who's had her last non-COVID year was 4th grade. Her next, hopefully year without mask will be 8th. If a child was in kindergarten and they had no COVID, the next year they're going to not experience any of this as 4th. It's a huge passage of time and so much, experience for them. So I'm very, very happy and pleased with the work that's gone on from everybody. That we're going to, have a vastly more normal year this year. I think it's extremely important. I'm very happy to see it. So thank you all.
Yeah, I would certainly chime in the thank you part, and I just want to thank all the administrators, the teachers. I personally, before joining the board, I've had very good relationship with, especially with Hillside, in working with some of their committees over there. And just with the school in general, I have had that, and I know Hastings is rare. It's rare. Even during COVID, the fact that we stayed fully open was a complete miracle. And I want to thank Bill and everyone. I want to thank Melissa, Maureen, everyone, and Melissa too, the two Melissas. When I come in, I really want to thank everybody, the teachers, the students bonded together, and I think that was really helpful with even when parents were going, I am a parent, I was going crazy, the students were actually sort of holding it down more than we were, and I want to recognize that. I know this is a common knowledge, but if we think about it, the waking moments of the formative years of our children till they are 18 years old, 50% of their life is in school, apart from weekends and holidays. It's in school. Their waking moment, I'm not talking about the 8 hours of sleep that kids are supposed to have, but 9 to 3 is rough, is 16 hours is the waking hours outside of 24 hours a day. Half of it, 8 hours, is right here, being trusted into teachers, administrators. And then some of us, because parents are working individuals, babysitters take some part too. So that trust needs to be in the school, and the board with every one of us allow this to happen in that safe space. And some of us are here because we want to know that our children are being holistically educated. And just like, I really respected Sabine saying I stepped up because of my sister, right? It's that really pull of that love, and I'm just hoping that we extend that love that we have for family to everybody else, because we are all one people. And I just want to thank you all for your wonderful work. Yeah, that's all.
Well said. Thank you. Let's have a great year, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sabine.